Hey, my name is Scott Lydon, and you're watching Swifty. In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about the benefits of closures. Now, keep in mind, functions are closures, and so any benefit that you get from functions is a benefit that you get from closures. But more specifically in this video, I'm going to talk about some of the benefits you get when you pass in a closure as an argument to a function. Closures can capture values from the surrounding context in which they are defined. So when you pass in a closure as a parameter, let's say func takes closure, and then alright, so let's say we're calling this function and it takes a closure and we want to print we executed the closure body. What gets run first, we're calling takes, so the compiler jumps over here, then it starts running the body, it prints this, then it calls the closure, and the closure is called here and it's defined here, so then it runs this body and we executed the closure body occurs, and this warning is going to go away in just a moment. What do I need to do? You want me to? Okay, there we go. It should be gone. It's not going to bother me with that. So the cool thing is, let's say you create a scope. We're creating a do block, and now we are putting the closure in here. So you might say, why would you use closures? What is the benefit? Well, let's say there's a variable in one scope. Let item to do equal feed the cat, and we are going to interpolate that item to do. Interpolate is the word to describe how we're kind of dropping in this value. So the thing is, item to do is not accessible in this function. So we can't do item to do. It's not available. So that's one huge benefit of passing in closures as parameters. Because let's say there's a value that you want to use in this scope, but you need something to happen after this function is executed. So this is very useful in asynchronous environments where, let's say you're making a call to a database, and I'm going to do this very simply. This is kind of an oversimplification. So this is a do block that we are pretending is the definition of view did load, and this is a API call that you have implemented on a separate .swift file. So one thing is, when you're designing your code, you want things that have to do with the database to maybe be in your model, for example. And then you want the logic to handle the information that comes back from the model in maybe your view controller. Depending on if you're using MVC or MVVM, this could be your view model. View model. We'll call this API call. We're going to say we are fetching information, and we're pretending it's asynchronous, but it's not really. Asynchronously, and then when the information comes back, we're calling this function. And so that's how the timing can work out, so that when this is done calling, you can call the your closure that you're passing in. So you get the information back, it comes here, and you can use the values that are available to you here and maybe put them in your view. So dispatch queue.main.async, and you're popping back on the main thread, for example, because if you were making an actual API call, it would set this on a background thread. And then when it comes back over here, you can do things like reload your table view. So UITableView.reload data. Now, I don't know if it'll throw a bug. It probably will. I'd be a little bit disappointed if it didn't, but oh yeah, that's good. Okay, so go away. Now, use of unresolved identifier takes. Now I'm using takes, but it should be API call. Oops, API call. How the compiler would read this is in your view did load, it starts running this code, and let's say we're creating a property in view did load, which is something you would do sometimes. You often want to have a property list above view did load, and then you're making a call to API call, which could be on another .swift file, and you so then the compiler jumps to API calls definition, and then it starts running the code in the body of API call, and then it calls the closure that was passed in, so then it jumps over here, and then it runs this print statement, and then hits this dispatch queue, which bounces the background thread that we're running on back onto the main thread, and then we can update the UI, and maybe we got some information that we fill the array that then fills the table view, and then we reload the data. So that's being able to access properties in a different scope is a good benefit to using closures. It allows you to separate the roles that your code executes. So this could be the view model or the view controller code, and this could be the model code, for example. You might want to see this in a project, so let me pull up one of mine.